Sometimes a customer might grab you or grope you somewhere. In a couple of instances that's happened and I've asked for that customer to get kicked out and that won't even happen. And that doesn't happen in another industry.
A colleague of mine was sexually assaulted at the club. There was a sort of a separate area, like private dance rooms. There were no cameras, we didn't have any sort of duress buttons, and yeah, there was no security up there. She was quite literally trapped. I raised it with management, and then I didn't really see any evidence of any kind of follow-up.
Stripping is legal in South Australia, but sex work isn't. It means any sexual touching between a client and dancer is a criminal offence and risks a club's licence. But rather than protecting women, these strippers say the law has helped foster a culture of secrecy around sexual violence in their workplace.
I've known of instances where a dancer was strangled in a dance and she was more afraid to leave the dance and seek assistance from the manager than to stay and just attempt conflict resolution. We will actually be punished for it because we've then put the club's licence at risk.
Luna claims she was dismissed from Adelaide strip club The Firm after raising workplace safety concerns over her colleague's alleged assault. She's now suing her former workplace in the SA Employment Tribunal. The firm is contesting the claim.
Abruptly, they just cut all contact with me without any notice or explanation.
The Work Health and Safety Act effectively prevents adverse conduct against someone who makes a complaint about safety.
The firm says a WorkSafe SA inspection found it complied with work health and safety legislation. It rejects that dancers are ever blamed for sexual misconduct and says it involves relevant authorities when necessary. It's installed a number of measures like CCTV, duress alarms and security staff to protect dancers. Last year, the Australian Tax Office ruled the firm had engaged Luna as an employee, not a contractor, and ordered it back pay her superannuation. The firm agreed. Now she wants the tribunal to rule she's an employee too, setting a broader precedent for her and other strippers to receive other employee entitlements.
It certainly looks like sham contracting. It's not sufficient to be able to just say that you're a contractor and then that's what it is. It's how you undertake that work. They don't have control over the way that they work in terms of when they dance, when they don't, what they can do and not do. They all indicate very much so that they're employees.
The clubs want the best of both. They want to be able to dictate when we work and how we work, but then they also don't want to be liable for us in any way. They don't want to be responsible for our tax, our super, our injuries.
The dancers allege it's standard for clubs to withhold pay via so-called fines to sanction behaviour.
Common fines that we would see in the industry, especially here in South Australia, would be if we're late, if we don't roster on to a shift that the club would like us to roster on to, if we're sick too many times in a given period, if we don't have the correct uniform.
The biggest fine that I've ever seen was $1,000, I think, for if the club fires you for some reason, you can pay that money to come back and work. There's been nights where I've gone home in the negative, if it's a quiet night, but I still can't go home. I'm still expected to stay there at the shift time set by the club, despite being an independent contractor.
The firm disputes its dancers have ever been fined more than they've earned, saying dancers are well remunerated and classifying them as employees wouldn't be accurate. It says strippers can work dates and times they choose, but concedes once they commit to a shift, they're expected to attend. Speaking generally about the industry, the dancers say historical stigma around their work, as well as a relatively young, feminised workforce, combine to disempower dancers.
We really are talking about an industry, though, which has been operating in the dark.
One of my favourite quotes from a manager is, "A new girl turns 18 every day." And they're coming into this industry, being moulded by the club they're working at, not being told anything about the nature of their employment.
I've never heard of anyone in our industry getting paid anything other than cash.
So hard to get loans for houses. I would like to buy a house one day, but I can't prove my income. We've asked for invoices, they got refused.
Luna and Violet have created an online hub to connect dancers and help them understand their rights.
Some of the recent cases that are coming out of the High Court are in fact adverse to employees and making it more difficult for people to establish that they're in fact full-time workers. I think campaigning, raising issues like this and joining unions is the best way to address more systemic problems with that power imbalance that happens between employees and employers.
Luna says if clubs won't engage them as employees, then they should allow dancers to truly work as contractors. She says that would be easier if sex work were decriminalised, like in the ACT.
Strippers there are at liberty to offer dancers that have a certain amount of more interpersonal contact or physical contact, but under no circumstances do they have to. So there's different sort of pricing structures, there's different terms of service, different types of exchanges, and it's negotiated person to person. It's not negotiated with the club. What the stripper would earn is, it's all theirs. They don't split that commission with the club. They actually operate independent of the club. They pay a fee to basically rent the space and have the right to conduct their business in that environment.
Luna's case will be heard in the Employment Tribunal this week.